We'll see if that kicks in. I hit the live button.
Okay, we're on. Yeah, I think we're live.
It's
live.
Good. For some reason, it's not showing up on my system here, but
people are.
Well, I'll keep fighting with this. In the meantime, welcome to the Friday night 3D printing channel Hangout. It's the middle of summer. We're taking it easy. But we'll see how the night goes on. I'm Richard with the Vidme channel, and tonight the main topic is working with multiple part prints. Working with the design of them and then the actual process of printing them and what we can do throughout the process. But let's get our intros going, and I still have a blank screen on here. So Martin, why don't you start while I fight with the screen?
Yeah, I'm Marteinn, or I'm at channel 3DP Iceland, or I'm on Twitter as 3DP Iceland. I do all kind of projects on my channel, testing filaments and documenting projects with my 3D printers. I also do those landscapes that I print out and paint. I've been doing a lot of videos where I print this out and paint and do a time lapse of the paint process. And I brought a lot of those to Earth this year and gave out. This is a fun thing I do. Here you see my son, Siggy. He's here in the background playing with a 3D pen, so he will be in video for some parts. But that's me, 3DP Iceland.
Great. Go ahead.
All right, I'm John. What do you do it? I run a YouTube channel. Been doing this for 2.5 years, a little bit over, and started getting into 3D printing in April of last year. So it's been over a year for 3D printing. I've been to a couple of the events so far, New York Maker Faire, MRF, and Earth, and look forward to attending other events. You can see got a little paint homage to the purple haze above my shoulder. Doing some green screen replacement there, so it's kind of off and on because it's a virtual green screen, so you'll see it acting weird at times. So anyway, you can find me on u.do.it on Instagram, u_do_it on Twitter, and I have a webpage, udoit.tv. That's udoit.tv. I've been putting a lot of effort onto this, and I have because I'm learning about how to market myself, which is what each one of us does as a content creator, and the webpage is an integral part of that. So thanks everyone for joining in.
Great to have you here, and see we got 15. I finally found my screen. That's up and running. As mentioned just before I went on air, I don't think I've done the hosting since about October or November. So I'm just sort of bouncing around here, getting what we have up and running. To kick things off, last night at a dinner meeting, a fellow asked me about 3D printing, and his thought process was you take a picture, you put it into a scanner, and then your printer will print off a 3D model. Didn't understand the process at all. And to break it down, to explain it to him, had to consider what we go through. And really, we have two separate hobbies that have been brought together here. One is the 3D design, which has been in its own world for many years, its own hobby, whether you're making your own animations or models for videos or getting into gaming. But so that's the design process, which is crucial to what we do. And then once you have that, we have another hobby that we started out with as 3D printing, and many of us have had to go and learn the other side before we can really get into the 3D printing. And that's the job of doing the print, knowing our filaments, our nozzles, all our settings of what's the best way to work with the materials at hand, the best way to get the best possible print, and what the limitations are of the printers and the advantages. And many of the people on these channels have multiple printers, and some are the workhorses, but sometimes some are, well, I know if I want to do that job, I want to use that printer. So that's the two aspects of doing the 3D printing. So let's take a look. Working with multiple part prints. First, you got to come up with the design, and why are you doing multiple part prints? One reason may be you don't have a multiple color printer, so you're going to print one object, change filaments, print the next one, put the two together, and keep on assembling things that way. Another reason might be just the limitations of our build area. Many times you want to print something that is much larger than the space that we have available to us. As folks know, I'm moved over to SLA printing, and here's my build surface. It's actually quite limited. So you have to look at how to break apart your design in order to finish your model. So the design process, is critical to it, and how you break it down. How have you worked with this, and what ways have you got? What tools do you have to get into breaking a model apart in multiple parts?
Yeah, I can speak about my experience in doing parts that are bigger than the print bed. And that was a shelf in my refrigerator, and that was like a functional part that had to withstand the loads of the stuff put in the shelf. So I didn't have the option just to glue parts together face to face. I had to make some structure into how the parts were aligned, and created like a support structure along the edges to have a bigger surface to glue, and don't have the surface aligning with the load. So the glue was not as critical in the structural part. It was a design that I had to work around because it was load bearing. And if it was a cosplay item or just a show piece, I wouldn't mind gluing two parts together, butt to butt, so to speak. But as it was a functional part, it was a challenge to get load-bearing application to work through throughout the part. So that was definitely a challenge, and I did that in Fusion 360, and spent quite a lot of time prototyping the seam to have it work.
So with it, did you design it as one large piece and then break it apart for the print, or you just designed it piece by piece by piece?
Yeah, I designed it, just started with one end, and the other end of it was a mirror object of the other end. And so I ended up with two objects, and then I designed the middle part to be the gluing side of it. So I designed it as a three-part piece from the get-go, so to speak.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we had David coming in.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, David.
David from Print Solid. I was looking for you on Twitter. I want to.
Give yourself the standard introduction here, who you are and how we find you.
Well, David Randolph, one of the owners over at Printed Solid. And you can always find me at printedsolid.com or on Facebook under Printed Solid or on Twitter under Printed Solid. So we're kind of everywhere.
Now, I've seen some of your work. You do some large projects, or you're used to working with multiple parts.
Absolutely. Spent a lot of time with that. End up a lot of people call me and ask about, dealing with large parts because, the printer calibration is something that most manufacturers tend to screw up. So talking people through how to properly calibrate the printers is kind of nice.
And yeah, it's a crucial task if you're doing multiple part prints. So
especially, I mean, once you go large scale, it's amazing how fast it actually happens.
How quickly things get out of alignment, as it were.
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a slight amount of warping on the bed, it goes terrible really fast.
Well, not even the warping, but even the E-steps. I mean, for your X and Y and Z, those things, most manufacturers mess that up on day one. I mean, they'll be off by, a half or a tenth of a millimeter, but by the time you scale up to, 500, 600 millimeters, that can be 3 or 4 millimeters off and be a problem.
I didn't even think about that.
So all my printers, I spent a lot of time doing the E-step calibrations and trying to make the perfect 20-20-20 cube. But the one thing I do instead of that is after I get the 20-20 done right, I like to make an object that's, at least 100 by 100. So I usually just make a big 100 by 100 box and check that out.
Yeah, so XY calibration also, you're talking about that, to getting everything squared up.
X, Y, and Z calibration, making sure that your steps are properly configured for that.
Yeah, I get it.
So all your printers have them, so it's just a matter of going through the steps on it.
How do you so you got a squish factor though on the first layer, so you lose a small amount of resolution on that. That just goes away.
You have a squish layer, but if you're smart, you can usually, if you calibrate it properly, you shouldn't get any elephant foot, and you should be okay. But most of the time, I usually tell people, just make an object that's got, an indent every 20 millimeters on the Z, and then measure that out.
Gotcha.
Because it doesn't matter if it's at the start or the end or even in the middle, you can get away with it.
Okay, I never thought about going through that process, but that I can see making life much easier. Just go for length, add your marks, and do your measurements from there.
Yep. And there's some pretty simple formulas out there for calibrating E-steps. So, and it's not that hard. It's usually whatever your current steps is divided by whatever your millimeter count is. Usually will give you the result of what you need.
Right. Now, with the SLA printing, the one thing I'm learning to work around is actual shrinkage, which you have a perfect calibration, but after you have cured the resin, things might have changed somewhat, and you have to learn the properties of each resin and how it works. Have you encountered that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you see that especially with resin printers, but you're also really going to see that with, we get that with ABS. ABS is going to easily be 5 to 10%, depending on the brand. But what's worse about the shrinkage is that if I made a solid block, that's going to shrink evenly all the way through. But if I make a block with a bunch of holes in it, that's going to shrink at different rates, and you really have to start thinking about it. So a solid block, I might do 10%, oversize at 10%, so it shrinks down just right. But if it's got a bunch of holes in it, I will probably oversize it maybe only 5%. So you really have to kind of look at your object and think about just oversizing when you know the material itself is going to shrink on you.
Right. One of the filaments I was looking at is actually glass-based, and when you do the print, you put it in a kiln to do the actual cure. but you're losing all the plastics that are in there. You still have a nice glass object when you're done, but you've now tossed out all the plastic. And so with something like that, I think it would be a nightmare to try to do multiple parts with it.
Oh, dear Lord, yeah, because you're ultimately shrinking to fill the void between the material, which is going to be slightly inconsistent depending on where things are.
Yeah, yeah. So you really have to look at what material you're going to use for your multiple part print. Now,
And yeah, and in addition to that, you probably need to do a bunch of test prints of different shapes to get a good feel for it. But you really are just going to have to guess.
yeah, yeah. Turn it into an art form.
A true intuition-based art form.
Yeah. Now, what about using multiple types of filaments for the object? Because if you're using different filaments for different parts of your final object that you're building, you're going to have different shrink rates for each.
Well, not only are you going to have different shrink rates, but you run into another problem. A lot of materials don't like to get glued to other materials. They also, when you use multiple extruders, they don't like to adhere to each other in those configurations. So, you know, you're not going to have a good time bonding ABS and PLA, and then it's going to be even worse when you try and paint it.
Right.
So, yeah, you got to pick your materials and pick your battles. I usually I kind of have a rule that I stick with the same material across the board, except for mechanical. If I can get a mechanical fastener in there, it's perfectly fine.
Right. My daughter's boyfriend, he does a lot of cosplay prints, and I now understand why he does mechanical joints wherever possible.
Yeah, it's almost never perfect. I mean, I've tried a bunch of different. I mean, I've tried a bunch of different adhesives, and ABS has always been acetone welding for me. That's the best one I've found for it. I find Weld 4 is a really good one for PLA, but it's still not perfect. So I'll usually go with friction welding for PLA. I've had some. There was a company called 3D Goop at IRF this year. And I took a couple of bottles of their stuff home, and that was a really solid adhesive. I mean, for PLA, I need to track them down and find out more about them, because the bottles I took home, I'm very impressed with their bonding.
And that was 3D Goop?
3D Goop.
All right.
Yeah, they had a pretty impressive. It was almost like a tug of war with two pieces that they had printed, and it looked like they were really giving it a lot of effort, and it wasn't breaking.
So, and that's been our test. That's been our test too, and we are just loving it.
Now, since Martin's working on one, have you ever used a 3D pen and use it as a welder?
I haven't used a 3D pen as a welder. I've used soldering irons, but my favorite has been the Dremel with filament in it. That seems to be working the best for me so far.
A Dremel with filament?
So you take the tool out of a Dremel and you put in a piece of filament.
Oh, okay.
And you literally use that to friction weld. So you'll sit there and it'll spin real fast, it'll melt it, and the filament that's in the Dremel will fill in the gap that it creates. So it literally will heat up both sides and friction weld it all together.
Oh. Yeah. I have my daughter's sword beside me. I've inherited it since I'm the one that broke it.
Mm-hmm.
But the welds on here she did with the 3D pen. And everything held quite well, except for where I sat on it. And it very, very clearly, but you can't see a lip where the 3D pen did the weld, but there's still a lot of gapping in there, so it didn't do a great joint.
Yeah, and I think that's just a lot to do with the idea that the 3D pen is putting out hot plastic and not melting the other two surfaces you're trying to bond a lot. So you tend to get a lot better adhesion if you can actually melt both surfaces and have them join together, and then you fill in the rest.
Yeah, you have to grind in like a V slot to fill in with a pen. I was doing some tests the other day just to play around, but putting two objects face to face and putting the 3D pen on it, it was not able to properly weld the two parts. But if I put in a small V slot in, I could have more surface contacting with a 3D pen, and that gave me a stronger melting area, bond. So if you design the parts for it, it's one way to go, but it's probably not the most optimal. It was quite strong though.
Skewed View on chat is talking about using a super glue with baking soda. And then I've never thought of the idea of combining those two. I don't know what the role of baking soda is.
Well, it's almost like what woodworkers do. So I've done that where you use a cyanoacrylate with sawdust.
It makes it into a more thicker material to work with. But I find that there's a gel form of super glue which helps out, because regular, super glue is just not cutting it. But I found a gel super glues. This gel super glues tend to help out with that. But yeah, baking powder, flour, sawdust, anything like that to thicken it up.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I use the gel form of super glue when I need to use a glue like that. I just hadn't thought of adding your own filler and doing the mix.
Yeah, is the purpose of the filler then just to have it more manageable, or does it have any chemical properties with the super glue?
It's more manageable. It literally makes it thicker, so you can kind of paste it into there and make it dry a little bit faster and give it a little bit of air, because super glue kind of needs air to dry. So when you put a binding agent in there, you'll get a little bit of airflow going through it.
Also, if the parts aren't perfectly matched, it fills in that space, and that's why we call it a filler.
Yep. Another one of my secrets is I use accelerant. There's the super glue accelerant that you can get. Everyone should have a bottle of that around. One bottle will last forever.
Yeah, I have the Instaset.
Yep.
It's from BSI, Bob Smith Industries, and I use this all the time.
Here's a secret to those here's a problem with the accelerants. The accelerants actually are not as strong of a bond as super glue. So I will use it to tack stuff together. So what I'll usually do is if I need it to be a really strong bond and I'm relying on super glue, I'll take accelerant and I'll literally just use it to tack a couple of points to hold it together while the actual super glue dries over time.
Yeah, I've used it just to spray on the objects as I have put them together. So the accelerant is just on the outside lip of the objects.
So and that's a lot of help. Got to be a little careful though, because that annoying white ghosting it leaves afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find you have to give things a good cleaning after you used the accelerator on there, and then you can finally prime it and paint. But I found my primers don't like sticking to it if you leave it on there.
Which primer do you use?
Well, actually, I just got some new one. That primer I was having problem with was basically an auto body filler primer.
Okay.
And it wasn't happy. I just got some, what's the brand name? It just says Fine Surface Primer on here. So I haven't tried it yet. So.
Okay. I've had good luck with 2-in-1 primer. Let me go grab a can. I'll show you real quick.
Just trying to see if what's to make.
Yeah, cyanoacrylate works fine for me. In some cases, it sets too quickly, and it like I did the Dr. Doom mask, and it set so quickly that I didn't even have a chance to get it aligned properly.
Yeah, with the Instaset.
So this is the primer that I've really had some good luck with. It's a filler primer.
Okay.
And it does a really good job at kind of filling in the seams and the layer lines to sand with. And it also does a good job bonding with Bondo too. So as I go back and resurface stuff and polish it, it comes out pretty well.
Well, I made the swap over to this one because of the SLA prints, where the filler primer actually looks kind of spotty when you take a look at your print under a microscope. It's not just designed for the small detailed parts that I deal with, but for the larger stuff with the FDM printing, I like the filler primers.
Oh yeah. I mean, as soon as FDM, I would do filler primer. The smaller stuff, I haven't done enough of to have a good opinion on that one yet.
Yeah. But yes, Chris. Yeah, I finally found the name on there. You're right with the name of that primer. Yeah, I find your world changes when you start having to look at your prints under a microscope to figure out how good everything's turning out. Yeah, you have to start changing some of your parameters
to work with. Absolutely.
Now, we've been going on how to glue things together in that. How about the design process itself? What sort of tolerances do you like to work with?
As sloppy as humanly possible. That's always been my rule. Just because, I mean, when you're printing large, well, let's put it this way. I generally like, at least a 1/10 of a millimeter tolerance, just because of layer lines.
Right.
And you want some room to sand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm finding myself
using
always
a
creating more and more tolerances into parts, just because I've reprinted so many times when parts are too tight together. So like, yeah, 0.1 millimeter is quite common for me also.
Yeah.
And I usually undersize my holes and drill them out almost every time.
The problem I had with that is I have to increase the amount of walls that I use, the perimeters in that case.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's catch. But my rule of thumb is if I'm planning on sanding it, I usually have to do 6 walls anyway.
Oh.
Because if you're going to sand something, you need to have some place to sand too.
Yeah. Okay.
If you put 6 layers in, you might, by the time you're done, you might have sanded off 2 layers on a large project.
I understand. Just never thought about it until you said it.
I think what Matt just posted there, 0.2 for tight. I think that's a number Angus uses when he talks about tolerances. It's a good area to start from anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good test that he has, the tolerance test or the where you have to break apart or spin object, and then you can see how good your printer and material is in regard of tolerances. So if you print that out and find that 0.2 is quite loose and 0.15 is maybe in a good fit, and your printer is comfortable printing with that tolerance. So that's like a tool to find out how good of a system you have and what tolerances you can use in your designs. And
I
think
had
a lot.
That in the room here. I'm going to run off and go find it again. So keep talking, and I'll be right back. So that is a great test to have.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember Angus was saying in one of his streams, a lot of people thought this print was a tolerance torture test for the printer, and he corrected that and said it's basically a calibration tool for your design, not a printer torture test. So that's a good output too.
I'll tell you this: most of the droid builders that are out there, if they release files or anything like that, they almost all put in a calibration print into their files, which they take like the common bolts or the bearings or whatever mechanical parts they have, and they actually make a little jig. You're supposed to print that out first And if your bolts fit it and your bearings fit it, then you know your printer's calibrated properly for that project.
Oh, wow.
They take it kind of seriously.
Yeah, if you're going to use a lot of hardware, it makes sense to have a universal way to, because if you're getting a 8mm bearing, it's going to be 8mm, but your 8mm print is not going to be 8mm necessarily.
By the way, Shenanigans wants us to define large prints. My definition of large print would be anything that requires multiple parts to be printed because it doesn't fit on the printer. So anything larger than, let's say, 6 inches.
Yeah, I think that
my cat for the loss of that test, because I did have it out earlier today, and it's not where I left it, and it's not on the floor. So the cat's probably put it in somewhere safe. So nothing totally for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that definition. If you have to design around the fact that the part is big for some reason, then you could define it as a big print.
Well, then there's huge, that BFG 9000 that was printed. And,
yep.
I forget how many pounds that was, but
I got a 500 by 500 printer down here, so I think that's big enough. And then I got, the Rays, which is 300, 300, 600. So I got some big printers, but I usually use like roughly 6 inches or 8 inches because most people are in that average, Prusa size printer like that one.
Right.
That's your average range.
Yeah, and a full build volume of the FK1 that Glenn is building, that's going to be a big print, even though it's one print. That's like 1.2 meters wide.
He was doing 1 meter by 500, was it? Or was it was something shorter, wasn't it? 1 meter by something.
It's 1.2 meter on the side, and then 400 by 400, I think, on the height and depth.
Okay. So yeah, we'll call that a large one print.
A common thing I see people working on are cosplay helmets. And our heads don't fit into that standard print space. So that's an area where you're doing multiple parts, but you're doing one design. After you get the design, you have to cut it into pieces to fit whatever print surface you have available.
And helmets are the worst because no matter how you cut it, you're going to just waste so much support most of the time.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you a trick on helmets that I found. With helmets, what I do is I measure ear to ear on my head, and I make an object, just a little rod or a box that's equal to that size of ear to ear. And I'll take almost anybody else's helmet and take it into Slicer or, Simplify, and take my rod, drop it in there, and just scale it till I see the rod sitting inside the helmet at the right sizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll take it, save that STL out, slice it up, and then print out the pieces.
Right. Well, what Peter does, and the reason I got this done, we got scans of our heads done at Comic Expo. And you can actually take that scan, put it inside, build the helmet around it. And once you've set your scaling, your head's going to fit in there. Your nose is going to fit in.
Yep.
Not mine.
Though I did have to fix my print because when I got the file, it looked like the back of my head had been caved in by an axe. But that was just my scan because he was scanned shortly after I was, and his was smooth. So I must have a big dent back there or something. Caused by my hat, I guess, which I don't have here. I haven't unpacked it.
Now, I had a fun one. I did a Daft Punk helmet a few years ago, and it had a big, huge visor for the face. Well, of course, you can't print that, and you're not going to find that shaped. So I actually made a little, vacuum table out of some pieces and nothing fancy. But what I did is I actually 3D printed the mold just out of PLA and then used that to form the piece on the vacuum table.
Oh,
That's
that's
a
cool.
very efficient way of working. I've heard of a few people, especially doing cosplay things, especially the Star Wars Stormtrooper armor.
So it's a helpful way to do some vacuum forming.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you haven't played with that, everybody and their grandmother should try vacuum forming at least once, because all you need is a shop vac and some pegboard and you're done.
And you can get some very nice results out of it.
Surprisingly nice.
When you start sanding your PLA print and look at something that's been vacuum formed, you start whimpering.
The only thing that's weird is when your significant other's in the house and they're wondering why you're putting sheets of plastic in the oven in the kitchen.
Never mind, dear. No, an effective way of working. What about mechanical parts? Like you have your robots. That's considered as a multiple part print, but you're making parts not to join, but to actually work together.
So, I mean, I do a lot of metal pieces. I tend to try not to have plastic rub on plastic. I just don't think that's a good idea. So most of the time, I'll just get, bushings or flanges and embed those in the print. And then I can use, metal parts to actually make the moving parts work together. So like on the BB-8 drive system, it's all bearings. It's all flange bearings inside of that with the rods passed through it.
Okay.
So, and it's just because, you never want plastic rubbing against plastic.
Not going to have a long lifespan.
Yeah, people were asking for a cat, so I brought
There you
them
go.
along.
There you go.
This one was sleeping just on the sofa.
My dog doesn't like me talking without her in my lap for some reason.
Well, my cat scattered when I went looking for that part. So, and by the way, if some things all of a sudden go dark, I've heard some more thunder behind me. So there is a storm here. Last thing we need, because our fire rating is extreme right now. But, I'm just glad I don't have a print running.
We had our storm earlier today, so I understand.
Oh, that the joy of power outages.
Got some luck.
Now, with that, did you have a power outage and did you have to restart, or do you have good power?
No power outages. I'm lucky, but we had a flicker. But of course, I have UPSs on everything.
Right.
What size UPSs are you using on your printers?
1,500 watts. I have one of those for each of my printers.
And what's the length of time that'll last if you're running a print?
It varies by printer, but I can usually get about 30 minutes off of it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's good to know.
So decent number. Decent number.
You're gone over 30 minutes. It's a major power problem anyway. So
yeah, it's going to be a real outage if it's that. And then I'll be honest with you, when it comes to those power resume features, it's kind of fun and nice to say you have it. But most of the time after a power outage, if it stays, if your material cools down to room temperature, you're not going to have good layer adhesion when it starts back up. So, I mean, the part's practically ruined as is in most cases.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, they get loose from the bed. Like if you have Magigu, it will come completely loose from the bed.
you get loose from the bed, but also when it starts to print back up and your parts cool all the way down, your nozzle's cooled all the way down, that's kind of an issue. So, I mean, you get full cooling on all your layers, and it's just not going to get the next layer after it starts back up. It's just not going to sit very well.
right.
So, especially if you're printing with anything other than PLA.
I actually haven't gone through one with the SLA printer, so.
I'd be interested to see how SLA does. I haven't tried SLA like a long pause or anything like that. I have a feeling that it should be fine as long as your resin doesn't dry out.
I'm trying to think who it was. Someone was mentioning they actually, on a regular basis, ended up stopping theirs to add more resin. So just to top up the resin as they're going along, and it worked out fine for their prints. That's one thing with the Moya here, is you don't have a resin feed for it. So what you have in the vat is how much you got to work from.
I'd be interested. I might have to give that a test sometime. I've got some prototype machines at the shop. I might have to hit print and intentionally pause it and leave it there for a day or two and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, working with complex parts, another question for you. Our standard nozzle, I don't know what the degree of the angle is of the actual nozzle tip. Have you ever tried machining it so you get into close, getting closer to some or protruding parts? So rather than a straight side, you have a curved side.
I'm not quite following what you're asking. I mean, you know, there's different nozzle sizes, but most times since you're printing layer by layer, you don't have to worry about interference from the nozzle.
For this one, we're working with inserting an LED into the print. So there's a print pause, the LED goes in, but the nozzle can only get so close. The nozzle, the LED, we're using the G code to avoid that area where the LED is sticking up, but we like to get the material as close to that LED as possible. So the concept was to actually remachine the nozzle tip down so the very tip of the nozzle can get close. I just, you know, that came up from the engineer, and I hadn't heard of anybody trying that. But
that's a very unique case scenario. I mean, that's a very unique one because, I mean, if you machined your nozzle any smaller, you're going to have to put the wrench up higher. I think what I'd probably have to do in that case is I'd probably want to, take like a volcano nozzle, which is a really long nozzle meant for the volcano blocks, and put a nut on that, probably weld a nut higher up on it, and then grind down the nut around the nozzle. Or lays down that. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would work for that one-off.
Yeah. I see Matt saying there the degree of the angle depends on brand.
Yeah, it depends on the brand, but most of the time I think what you're really thinking about is that the final nut on the nozzle is what's probably hitting everything.
Yeah.
So, and that's ultimately the same size. So in that case, yeah, I'd literally have to rework a volcano nozzle, and that's a very unique problem.
Yeah, it's just something came up, and as we're dealing with prints, let's see what else he has here. Forcing the nozzle to do something stronger than brass.
Yeah, it can blow out the sides if you make sides if you made the holes really the whole nozzle assembly really thin.
Yeah, all right.
It's a challenge.
Yeah. The heat was the one thing I was concerned about, because if your nozzle tip's going in, that very tip is going to lose its heat very quickly.
Yes.
Whereas the standard nozzle design, you have very even sides, so the heat should be distributed quite nicely. And
you almost have to take your nozzle after you've kind of remachined it and made it thin down and bake it in ceramic.
I think it's a problem I'll leave with the engineer.
Yeah. If it was me in that case, I would go back and redesign that a little bit so that the LED would sit just a few layers lower.
Right.
And that you could bend the leads out of the way.
It's for an existing scanning system, industrial system. And they just had to replace everything. Was incandescent bulbs in this thing. And when they changed it to LEDs, they changed several of the configurations. And as far as the engineer, from what I can tell, he couldn't figure out a scenario where he could drop that LED down the fraction of a millimeter to make it flat.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
It's one of those things when you tell people, oh, 3D printing, we can do this, do that. And then they start pulling things out of the woodwork and go, oh, God, can that be done?
You give them the world and they want the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
See, that type of scenario, I would have to like re-engineer the whole idea. I'd probably like 3D print out a housing for the LED that sat into a hole that hosted all of that.
I like that idea.
Well, that sort of got off topic. Let's go back in.
Oh, that's multi-part.
That's multi-part.
Yep. And my cat doesn't want to come say hello. He's yelling at me, though. Back with the design process. We talked about tolerances. Are there other things that you have to consider while you're at the design stage when you're working with something it's going to go beyond your build surface?
Well, one, you got to worry about stresses in your final build, because every single glue joint on there is going to have different stresses than anywhere else on your print. And you have to take that into consideration. That's a big problem right there. Because if you have a seam that's going down the side of the helmet, now your whole helmet can literally split down that straight seam. So you'd be better off making a curved seam or multiple seams in multiple directions just to alleviate stresses.
Right.
So splitting your objects up is going to be a big deal too.
Right.
That's a big factor.
So in that case, you're saying it's not just a simple slice in whatever program and split it up. You're saying add some type of complex geometry to that seam.
At the very least, add some complex geometry to the seam, because if you have if I had, my example is that if I was making a ball, I wouldn't make 8 perfect pie pieces that all fit together. I would actually make them offset from each other so that no seam hits any other seam after it's joined. Because I don't want that break going right dead down the middle of that ball where, you tap it on its side and it'll split apart into 8 pieces again. So, and like Uncle Ron's saying, it's, jigsaw pieces, anything that, you can kind of get a mechanical faceter into it. About the only thing I don't like is a dowel. Making a peg and hole.
Right.
Just because the way layer lines work on 3D printers, the peg is always going to snap right off at that first layer.
Yeah. Once again, we have Matt there talking about using woodworking joints. Dovetail, finger joints, tongue and groove.
Yeah, all of those would work beautifully. So all of those would work out really well for somebody, but I would avoid, straight pegs or anything like that, unless you take and get your pegs from something else. So if I went and got wooden dowel or metal dowel or threaded rod or something like that, I could make holes in everything and then use that as my pegs between my surfaces.
That's what we have here is it's wooden pegs that was used in the sword. Now this was another 2.5 feet beyond here, and with wooden dowel running actually the entire length.
And that adds some structure to it too, and helps with alignment while you're gluing it all up.
Yeah.
It's a perfect way to handle that.
Just doesn't save it when you sit on it.
No.
Yeah, that's outside the design boundaries.
You didn't calculate sitting as part of your stress testing.
There.
But no, whenever I try to build something big, I usually try to think about how stupid I will be when I actually finally use it. What's the stupidest thing I can do to it? Am I going to drop it off a table?
Right.
If I'm going to sit on it, If I'm going to make a helmet, am I going to think about slamming my head to the back of the chair in the car while I'm driving around like an idiot on Friday night? Something like that. So you have to kind of think about those type of things. Oh, City Aperture's got a good one. Take the nail with the tip and the head cut out. That works great. Also, the pegs from a rivet gun work really well. I've used those quite a few times.
Yeah.
So you use almost like registration marks in the prints?
Well, and structural. So they can be for alignment pegs. You can take those, put holes in the two joining pieces, and then use them to align everything as you glue it together. But it will also create some structure to keep the pieces from falling apart and not depend just on glue or the plastic along those seams.
It's not a solid joint, but have you used magnets to hold parts together?
I've used some magnets. BB-8's head is held on by magnets.
Oh, okay.
It actually has 6 50-pound magnets in his head. So it takes a lot of force to hold it down. And that did some stresses that I wasn't accounting on. And I've had some plastic actually break because the magnets were too strong.
Oh.
Ripped it right along layer lines.
Yeah.
What'd you do to compensate for that?
I changed the print orientation.
Yeah.
So I changed it from a rod to a beveled over rectangle, and then used that and printed that sideways, and that helped with the layers.
Do you play with your percent infill? What do you consider a strong infill versus weak, or does it really depend upon what filament you're using?
Most of the time, I sit there and I consider it is usually the design, not the filament, that does the ultimate strength. If somebody says I want 100%, printed part, I'll tell them if you're doing 100%, do one shell and then do 100% infill. That tends to work the best. But I find that usually 4 to 6 shells with 50% infill is going to be the same strength on almost any material.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you don't have to waste the material. And the reason why is because, don't forget, strength has multiple values to it. There's also, shock as a factor for the material. And if you make something perfectly solid and you hit it with a hammer, it's going to shatter like glass. But if it has a little bit on the inside, so it can push the force through and have kind of absorb the force a little bit, you're going to get a lot more. You're going to get a lot more shock resistance out of it, which is a factor that most of the time people, when they talk about strength, they're actually talking about shock and shear.
What's your favorite pattern? Your most common go-to pattern for infill?
I'm lazy. Triangles.
Yeah, gotcha.
I find triangles are pretty good. If I'm using Simplify, I'll usually go honeycomb. But most anything else, I will do triangles. If I'm doing 100% infill, I switch over to lines.
Okay.
I haven't done enough testing to have a strong opinion about all the newer infill patterns that are out there. But I find the triangles and honeycomb are more than enough in most cases. It's good enough for the space shuttle. It's good enough for me.
I was just watching a video by Stefan CNC Kitchen, and he did both in both directions. How strong the infill is if you pull up things apart, and also if you crush them. So he was doing a rig and finding out different strengths and print time and material use and all that with the different infills. So he has good information on his channel if you want to find out if a honeycomb is stronger than like a gyro is a new infill pattern, the Prusa slicer, and so he has all the scientific data on it.
I'll have to follow that. But my favorite thing I like to tell people is that I don't trust anyone's scientific data until I do it. It could be Bill Nye telling me that, and I would still be like, let me try it first.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually building up a small rig to do my own scientific tests. And it's over to my camera here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's here. This is like a pool test. So this is just like I got this in a fishing shop to measure out the weight of the fish, and it goes to 25 kilos. And I'm fixing this to this board, and here I put in my phone to record the screen because the screen does not have a maximum recorded value, so I have to record a high frame video. And then I put in the part in this hole and pull on this, and this will be fixed to the part. So I have like small objects like this that I don't have a unbroken one, but this goes into this part here, and then I can print out filament samples and measure out the strength. And I'm trying to do it as repeatable, so the variation of the measurements are.
I like that. When you record your data, record it with the layer line switched. So you should have 2 points where you're pulling against the layer and you're pulling along the layer, and you can by rotating that test piece.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. I printed up upside down like this, so it goes up here. So if I orient it in this way, I'll test the layer strength, the layer bonding. But if I do it like this, I'm more measuring the material strength, so not the layer bonding. So it's designed in a way to be exactly that.
I like that. I like that rig, and I like the data you'd be collecting from that.
Yeah, and this part here is just a shield because when the part breaks, it flies off. And I was having like a big bucket at the end here first when I was just testing, and this is still work in process. And the parts were flying into the bucket and then back into my face. And here I want to have it contained inside this. So it's like a work in process at this stage. We'll do a YouTube video on it when I've done the final save to use part.
Yeah, that's cool.
I like that. I like that. And you can also just do a drop. I mean, to compare with that, you should do a little drop rig.
Do what? Sorry.
Do a little drop rig to see the shatter point.
Yeah, but how the parts break when they land, you mean?
Oh, when they land or they take any sort of shock. So
yeah.
A little 1 kilogram weight, put it on a straight drop it straight down from a fixed height.
Yeah. That could be the next trick.
Yeah, that'd be a good simple one, and then that's some good data to collect for yourself. I like that.
Yeah. I'm always testing the maker box samples and do video on each sample from the maker box. And I've been breaking those parts just by pulling them by my hand, just breaking and saying it was quite difficult or not difficult at all or very difficult. And that has been the scale, not very scientific. But now I want to have some metrics.
I like that. Oh, you want to hear a funny side note? So I've owned part of MakerBox for a little over a year now, and I finally got it into the system that they finally are starting shipping boxes to me so that I can actually try out the samples too.
Yeah, okay.
They're all going out to you guys. I never get it, and so finally this month I finally got it.
Yeah, I have the bi-monthly because of shipping is expensive, so I do the bi-monthly.
I crossed the border to pick up mine last time. They said, "How come it's been so long since you got lost one?" I had to explain I'd been away for a few weeks.
Like I went out.
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm gonna head off. It's getting close down here for Wildwood, so we'll be going down in the boat tomorrow. So I want to make sure I get some sleep.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
See you,
for
John.
being on, and go over your contact info again.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm John. When you do it, I run a YouTube channel. You do it. I don't do it. You do it. You can find me on Twitter, you_do_it. On Instagram, you.do.it. And I have a webpage now that I've been working on for the last couple months, youdoit.tv. So give that a check out. I'm focusing a lot now on helping makers improve their engagement and improving social media. I have some mentors now who I'm working with that I'll be visiting with in August at Video Marketing World, and looking forward to sharing the information once I get more engaged. And along those lines, I gave a talk at IRF about that, why it's important for a maker to create a video or instructions on how to do something, because if you don't have a video or a photo, it didn't happen. And I mean, you can argue that it did, but it helps potentially inspire somebody else to do your work. And just like Marteinn there with his test rig, that's something that, I'm an engineer, and that's great for me, because I would love to replicate something like that or possibly improve upon it. And that's all about what engineering is. So thanks for joining in. Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Richard, for hosting. Thank you, Marteinn.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
I just
See you.
realized one of the things I skipped was getting everybody's contact info up onto the video here, onto the comments. I'll or onto the details. I'll get at that in a little bit here. These things you forget about when you haven't done it for a while.
So, one interesting thing that I probably should bring up to say hi.
What's up, my 3D peeps?
Oh, hey.
Justin's on the signing off, and Psalm joined. Damn it.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a newcomer to streams.
Well, we had to replace you.
Yeah, it took like half a second to get a new one in.
So introduce yourself. And
No, you can never replace John.
No, come on, man. You're good people.
So go ahead, introduce yourself, and let us know where we can find you.
I got to get used to the delay.
Do you have
my name's Sean. I'm with Skewed View 3D. I don't know if you can see my shirt. We're a father and son's 3D printing business. We're using YouTube as an advertising tool. This year we're doing 3 new designs a week. Model, print, videos up. Show everyone what we can do. We're putting them up on Thingiverse in my mini factory for everyone to download and print for free this year. Next year, we'll probably get a website up and maybe sell the STL files for maybe $1 to $5 each, depending on the detail. I want to make sure it's as affordable as can be, so it's a win-win for everyone.
You got a helmet behind you. Is that one of your prints?
Yeah, one thing, Sean, don't watch the YouTube video. Have the Google Hangout video and audio open.
I have to sit my phone up there on my shoulder.
Yeah, if you just mute the YouTube video and only watch and listen to the Google Hangout, then you will have no delay in the audio.
We'll get them there.
Yeah, I want to show you this.
I got you.
This is test pieces, and I'm printing out a lot of those just to break and get a reference on how accurate the device is, and because I'm pulling by hand, and and if I pull quick or slow, I will get some variation in the measurements. So I'm printing out a lot of test pieces to get like a reference on how accurate the device is.
Okay, so you're not set up with how quickly you're pulling on that at this time.
No, the pulling mechanism is just my arm pulling on. So I haven't. The plan is to have some servo or motor or something that will do it in a consistent way. But at this stage, it's just my hand pulling. So it's difficult to get that at a constant pulling force.
Ratchet straps. That way you'll get consistent force.
Yeah, that could be a good solution. Just wouldn't take up much space.
Oh, we're getting some feedback from someone here.
I got you here on the laptop, but I'm pretty sure it's going to get you feedback from me.
Yeah, you really have to have headphones or very low volume on your. If the speakers are close to the mic, you will get feedback.
Yeah, I got to get some headsets. I tried 3 different pairs before I even logged in here. So it took me so long. And for some reason, I can't get in through my phone. I'll figure it out. I'll just sit here quietly.
All right, well, now that we got you there, I was looking at the helmet behind you. Is that one of your prints? Oh, we're not getting that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered working, on the design, working around where are you going to cut your object, how you're going to
Nice
slice
setup David has.
and what other areas we have to look at. The material, the shrinkage, more and more relevant the bigger you get with your prints. Are there other areas that we should be looking at for these multiple part prints?
Yeah, one idea about that, like the community build we did at Earth. Then we were having a lot of different people printing out the parts with different printers and different materials. So what Matt did was he made sure everyone would measure out the size of their pieces just to make sure it was compliant to the whole system. So it's a challenge if you divide it by different people and with different printers, and then you have one part maybe it's a little bit off on this printer and a little bit off in the other printer, but in the other direction, and then you'll get into more problem. So if it's a community built or done on multiple printers, that should definitely put in some challenges, because then you have different tolerances throughout the design.
Yeah, that goes back to that calibration thing I was talking about earlier. Make sure you get your proper X, Y, and Z calibration. But even after I do that, I have a general rule that I use the exact same printer for any large assembly that all has mating surfaces. So even though I have more than enough printers to go to town on, I still end up using just one printer for large assemblies.
Okay, because that was the next question. What if you end up having to use multiple printers?
You might find some bad mating surfaces, and that could be a problem.
Even if you do your best calibration with them.
Even if you do your best calibrations, even if I had 2 of the exact same printers with the exact same settings, there's still a slight chance that it could be off.
Okay.
Especially as you scale up, if you got a lot, the larger you go, the more exponential it gets. Like that BB-8 ball I make, which is a 24-inch round ball, which is by a round hollow ball, which is by far the worst thing you could possibly try to make in pieces. That's going to always be a problem. And I tried doing on multiple printers, even after calibration. And no, it took one printer just going to town for a couple of weeks to get all the parts going.
Well, you're taking away our argument to our spouses, saying, "No, I need another printer so I can do this."
Okay. Well, it shows that I'm here, but I can't hear a damn thing.
Well, of course. I mean, and everyone should buy multiple printers from me. I am all for that. But for the most part, if you have mating surfaces, you really should use the same printer. I'll be honest. You really should use the same printer.
You can always work on different projects at the same time, so you need multiple printers.
Or you could, make two of the same thing. Make one backup of everything. See?
Yeah.
Of course, then again, I can also tell you, buy as many printers as you want, print it all on it. You'll find out they're bad, and you'll buy more filament from me. I could use that argument too. That works well, but. No, I usually don't rest my printers between large builds. I do. I mean, I clean it. I clean it out. I usually go and purge the nozzle, do cold pulls. I wipe down the bed. If it's PEI, I might even take a good sanding to it, because most of the time when you're doing large prints and you got 24, 48 hours and 2 or 3 kilograms of filament on the line, you don't want to risk anything. So you kind of do clean up your machine before you start a long print.
You just do basic servicing and fire up your next one.
Exactly. I kind of have my rule. I usually service my printers after every time I change a spool.
It sounds like a good rule.
It takes 10 minutes. It's worth it.
Yeah. Just
Yeah, we lost the image on Sholm.
He's probably trying to figure out some other way to connect to us.
Yeah.
I'm printing some upgrade parts for my Prusos right now, so.
Yeah, what are you doing?
They released a new hot end assembly, better cooling and all that. They updated the styles.
Yeah, I've done that. I still have to put it on. I printed it out in black patchy, so I have those.
That's the parts I'm printing right now.
Yeah, it also has a new bracket for the part cooling fan, so it's tilted 45 degrees.
So Uncle Ron was saying, except when using a 10K spool. No, even if it's a 10K spool, I would, if I run to the end of the 10K spool, that's perfectly fine. It's usually when you're swapping out materials, even if you're going, PLA to PLA, you might as well do a quick cold pull just to be safe. Just because of the color difference or manufacturer difference. But if it's the same spool, I might as well just let it go if it's 10 kilograms. And as far as servicing, I just pretty much do a couple cold pulls. I'll rub down the nozzle, make sure I get all the little filament bits off of it if there's anything left. Wipe down the bed, clean the bed off, and start over. And without bragging, I'd probably say if you looked at any of my printers, most people would be extremely jealous of my printer bed surfaces because they're all perfect.
Yeah, I tend to have the problem with a PI sheet on my Prusa. I'm always cracking the sheets by not being too patient when pulling off parts.
Yeah.
I was printing those parts out in patchy, and I wanted to try out the different strength depending on how much cooling was while I was printing. So I was printing out like 15 of those printed in patchy with all in just 2 and 2, and then with different fan part cooling setting. So I was doing a quick print, removing it, starting again, and never having the patience to wait for the PI sheet to cool down. I made the 2 holes in the PIA seat.
Here's my secret for my lack of patience. Cold packs.
Yeah.
I pull them out of the freezer and I'll just set it on the counter and put it on there for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. One thing I did after I had this issue, I took the removable print sheet off the spring seal and put it on the floor, on the cold floor, so it would cool down quicker. And that seemed to work quite nice.
That's helpful too. But cold packs, and if you happen to live next to a stone masonry, go get yourself a block of marble. They'll usually sell you a chunk of marble counter for like $10. Marble wicks away heat faster than most anything else other than ice.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know that.
So, and they'll usually have like a 12 by 12 piece of flat marble ready to go. So, and it's usually sitting in their trash pile, so they're happy to give it to you.
Yeah, okay. I should check that out.
Every time I moved, I usually end up throwing it away because they're just too darn heavy to move around. So, but they're worth it. So, give that a shot.
Yeah.
But by the way, you talk about the MK3 and you talk about PETG sticking to it too well.
Yeah.
I'll give you a super secret preview here. And it's only, nope, super secret. As of today, it's still not even in our store, but I have Gecko Tech making me custom plates just for Prusa MK3s that are flex plates.
Yeah, okay. So it's a whole plate with a
with Gecko Tech instead of PEI on it.
Yeah, okay.
And Gecko Tech is just known for nylon and PETG and TPUs, TPEs. So you don't have to worry about it sticking too well to PEI.
Yeah, I ended up with a plate that I put on Kapton tape on this one, and
Yep.
this is PET tape, so for polycarbonates. So I have this to test out.
But that one's going to become that's going to be up soon, and it's just for all of those materials that PEI hates.
Yeah. I have to talk to you about having a shipping option to Iceland. We have to find a price.
We'll get a price going for you, but yeah. So that'll be cool. I got to finish my testing on it, but they made me a bunch, and I've been printing with it and having a good time, so I'm really excited. Price is going to be about the same as what Prusa is charging for their plates, so it should be in about $40–45 range. Someone was asking on what they're going to charge for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So it won't be bad.
Yeah, with maker box samples, I'm always getting all kind of materials, and I want to be able to print them out, and not having all the samples just not sticking to the bed and have nothing to report back. I had those. It was like polypropyl or something. It was some stringed material that didn't stick to anything I had. I couldn't do any feedback on it.
If you're ever going to start any sort of large project printing or anything like that, you end up having to do just a boatload of test prints before you actually get to the actual printing, because you got to figure out how it's going to adhere to whatever plates you're using, if the parts are going to work. I get so many false starts when I do large prints because I'm not quite sure about that one overhang or anything like that, because most of the time large prints tend to be really thin. So it should be fun. But that's a big problem we all face, and that's why I say everyone should have 12 different ways to 12 different build surfaces to figure out whatever they got to figure out for that project.
Yeah, it's there are so many materials available now. It's not just ABS and
PLA anymore.
PLA.
All right, how's that?
There you go. Now they're better.
Oh my goodness, I had to go through literally five sets of earbuds in this house. My youngest just eats through them, and then he puts them around so I can find them.
Yeah, now your sound is good. So yeah, it's.
Now, what sort of large projects have you worked on?
For me?
Yeah.
Right now, the best thing we're doing right now, biggest thing is revamping some of our designs. I've got a robot from the movie Heavy Metal from 1981 we're doing. It's probably, I don't know, 14, 16 inches tall, maybe 18. I haven't actually measured it. It's in 5 different pieces. We're trying to take our designs that we had that we put up online and break them down, like our R5J2 and our Vincent from Black Hole. We've hollowed them out, screw top heads, trying to put plug-in limbs for the R5. Once we're happy with it, we're going to put those STL files up too.
Yeah, so you're designing in the joints, so it'll be easier to put together.
Yep. Yeah, we're revamping. Actually, I would like to do a life-size one here. I just haven't decided what yet. I'd really like to see an IG88. That's on our list to do as a design for sure.
Yeah, what software is it that you're using with the designs?
We use Fusion, we use Inventor, Maya. I actually got a contractor right now supposed to contact me in the next few days that has to have something done up in SketchUp, which I'm not a big fan of it, but we will do it.
Yeah, okay.
As Mark mentioned, you're designing your builds, so you actually have joints as part of the design. You're not having to glue or weld them together after the print is done.
We're trying to get them to plug in, yeah, so you can actually play with them and move them around. It's just a lot of tweak this and tweak that and back and forth before I'm happy enough to put them up online.
Now, with you selling your parts or your designs,
well, we haven't right now. This year, they're all for free.
Okay, I'm more curious about what you're doing as far as joinery options, knowing that you have consumers or people out there trying to copy or trying to make your stuff off your designs and stuff like that. Do you find yourself having to kind of simplify or lower tolerances or help people, try to make it simpler for people to actually make it home?
Well, like right now, we're revisiting, we're breaking it down so it's easier to print. We just started scaling up our designs before we saved the STLs because a few people have a problem scaling it up so big because it would come in, some of them would be really small. I never seen it as an issue because it's just a slicer thing, but might as well go ahead and do it. So now that we're bringing them in where you can just print them as is.
Yeah, I printed out some of your swords the other day and did the video, and I had to scale them up like 1000% or something.
Yeah.
Hey,
it still was good, right?
Yeah. Just when you imported it, nothing happened, but then there is a tiny part on the on the slicer.
Oh yeah, you got to zoom it in.
Yeah.
No, we're trying to fix that. So the ones going up here after this will not be like that. This is something we're working on right now. I don't know if the camera's picking this up. This is going to be this is a combat axe from the Call of Duty video game. Actually, just came off the Prusa.
Nice.
So I got to clean it up. Yeah, it will be once we get all the supports and everything out of there. It'd be pretty BA.
I like your print orientation. That it's probably a little bit of a challenge for some lower end printers, but that's not bad.
Yeah, that's on the MK3. I had to slow it down. That was the second. Actually, that was the third attempt. I had to slow it way down, and I had to reorientate it. I think this one here has convinced me that we're going to bite the bullet and get simplified 3D. just to put supports where I want them and take them out where I don't.
Well, have you seen that in Cura you can actually do that now?
No, we use Repeater or host for everything. Hey, I got a printer issue. Hold on, I got a beeping on the MK3. I'll be right back.
Yeah, so with Cura, you can basically mark areas where you don't want supports, so it won't auto-generate supports in that area. That's really neat.
So that's very helpful. I mean, that's the big deal. Outside of Simplify 3D, that's a big deal. So that's kind of nice that somebody else is able to do that.
Yeah, it was a long time coming, but yeah, that was really nice to see some other slicers doing that option.
Darn patents.
Yeah, yeah, it's always a difficult situation when somebody owns the idea or something.
Yeah, such is life. But I mean, I'm really watching because Simplify 3D has been kind of stagnant. They haven't come out with an update or anything in the last year, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I saw a comment from them earlier that they were getting closer to the next release, and that will be feature packed, as they said. I saw it on some tweet, but what that means is I don't know. But they have a lot of competition now in the market, so
yeah, a lot of people caught up with them, so it'll be interesting. So they're going to have to pack a lot in there to get people to kind of come back.
Yeah, I just recently got my license for it, and I'm still in the 2-week trial period, or you can return it, and I'm still evaluating if I'm going to keep it or not. But I found some use cases that it could be good. In some cases, it's no good. Like for my landscapes, when I import them into Slicer, it's normally a 1 gigabyte or 1.5 gigabyte STL file, and that opens up without any problem in the Prusa edition Slicer. But on Simplify 3D, it just hangs and freezes up if I do a larger STL than maybe 500 megs. I was looking into the G-code preview and see if I saw a difference in the landscape models if I saved it as a 50 meg or 100 meg or 200 or 700, and I was getting detail in the G-code preview with a 1.5 gigabit file that was not visible in a 1 gigabit file. So even though the G-code I save out to the printer is like 150 megs for the actual print, the STL file detail matters. My slicer has to be able to handle that file size, and Simplify 3D absolutely does not, even though it's a 64-bit program, and I have 16 gigs in memory in this machine, and it doesn't use it.
I really think it's their graphic driver problem. But
all right, crisis averted.
All right, he's back.
Yeah, the file loaded up finally, but I couldn't rotate it or do anything. As soon as I just did anything on the model, the Simplify 3D just froze up again, and I had to wait for several minutes before I could continue.
So definitely, yeah, definitely an issue. By the way, have you? I know we're a little off topic, but have you looked at the new slicer? Have you loaded up the latest version?
Yeah, the one that you can print directly to Octoprint 1.4. Yep. Yeah, I love that feature, just to set it to print immediately straight from the slicer when you export to Octoprint. That's awesome.
And they fixed the flash in there, but the graphics got a big update too. It's actually a lot more snappy and responsive on the graphics too.
Yeah, they have a new rendering or what's called rendering engine. Yeah, I noticed that.
So yeah, so pretty nice. A little off topic, but pretty nice. But it's a good part of the topic because yeah, large format objects are a big issue. when you're doing assemblies and stuff like that. We have a lot of resolution problems.
Well, Matt asked a question here about preferred slicers when you're working on these large projects. We've heard about the issues with file size. Are there other concerns?
Support generation and how it handles layer transitions. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I jump between like all of them when I'm looking at an object, and I'll go into G-code preview, and I'll kind of make my choices there. And rarely does it always end up being the exact the same slicer each time.
Oh, so you choose your slicer based on the project.
On object. Even if I'm using the same printer and I'm doing the same project, I might find that it just sliced better and it looks better if I use one slicer over the other.
Well, I guess I just suck because I just do everything repeater host. I figure that's what sandpaper and paint's for, but I like being the odd duck.
Hey, we like what we like. But yeah, some of the reasons I choose one over the other, it's usually how it does the layers to the infill. I'm usually looking for how the infill pattern fits into the layers itself. And also I find sometimes
Good night, Nikki.
Yeah, and I'll get some bad objects sometimes, and some slicers like Simplify does a real good job at ignoring errors in the STLs.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it. S3D.
So.
I want to show you one thing. This is part of the test prints I'm doing to calibrate my device to the strength test measurement device. And those are all broken. And I was getting quite different values from a batch of 40 of those prints. And they were all printed in the same go, sliced in the same go, just laying on the bed, 40 pieces. And if you see the infill, in one piece it's corner to corner. In this piece there is no infill, and in this piece the infill is in a different direction. And this was set to have like 10% infill, but I was getting a lot of difference measurements. And when I was looking at the prints, the infill was different between parts. So even though those were sliced together, laying on the bed. That was quite interesting.
Is that parts for something, Marteinn, or is that just something you do for testing tolerances and stuff?
Yeah, this is just a piece like that, and I'm building a rig to break this apart in a controlled way to measure out layer strength and filament strength. So I have here like 40 pieces that I printed out, and I showed it a little bit earlier, but here's the device. Now I have to check the focus again, sorry.
The heck is that?
Yeah, so this is like a weight measurement device used to weight fish. So it goes to 25 kilos. And here I have a slider that I put in this part and pull on this, and then the part will break.
Oh, nice.
And up top here, I will put my phone with my camera shooting at a higher frame rate so I can record the screen, because the device here doesn't have like a maximum value when the part breaks. So I do a video recording of the scale. So when I pull on the part, the scale goes up, and I record.
That is definitely next level, my friend.
So I'm trying
every filament.
Yeah, what I've been doing so far is just to print out those parts and breaking them with my hands, and seeing how it was easy to break or quite difficult to break, and just having a physical feel to it. But I wanted to make it a more controlled way, so I'm designing this rig. It's like a work in process, but I'm working on a video on it when it's done.
Yeah, you 3D printed everything but the actual reader.
Yeah, everything is 3D printed, just the screws to the board and the reader
Was that
itself.
your design? You come up with that design for that?
Yeah, it's totally just my design. So I wasn't looking at anyone else apparatus. I was just making this to.
That is even cooler.
So it's designed to, because I've been printing out those objects, and I designed the holder and everything around this piece. So it takes maybe 2 to 5 kilos up to 10 kilos depending on material to break those. So it's not a because this is a small part. So I want to have this device.
What's been your strongest filament so far?
I don't know, because at this point I haven't done any writing down of any actual measurements, just my feelings. So what I'm starting to do is
using the force.
Yeah, just using my hands. So now I'm gonna do it on a Excel sheet and have things written down, so I can say this filament is medium compared to the others I've done, or something like that.
But your infill pattern, the interesting thing about that is that when you put multiple objects on the bed, you're going to find that some slicers tend to project infill straight down across the whole bed. So sometimes, depending on where it is in the bed, you may or may not get a support beam going through it of the infill.
Yeah, I think that was happening with the parts I showed you, because in some parts, because it was low infill, like 10%, and some parts had infill and some not, and I was getting like 25% difference in strength between the parts, and I was trying to figure out why the tolerances were so great, because I can accept maybe 5 to 10% tolerance, but not 25%. And then I was looking at the parts and noticed some had infill and some not. So that's probably, yeah, like you said.
You may have to experiment with your slicers. I'm trying to think. I believe that's an option where you can actually force the infill for each item that's on the bed. I'm thinking it's Cura, but I might be wrong on that. But I have seen that as an option on one of the many that I've gone through.
With his testing rig, it'd be my suggestion to literally do one shell and 100% infill with the line fill pattern, because that's going to give you a true representation of the material and not so much of the slicer function.
Yeah, that could be a good idea. Those I printed out tonight. They are 3 layers and no infill, so every piece of them should be the same. But doing 100% could be also a good idea. The
only reason why is because if you have no infill, you created 4 structural walls as you're testing against. But if you do 100% infill, now you're testing the material itself, not the shape.
Yeah, I get you, because the walls are really the structural parts, not the. Yeah, that's true. So. Yeah.
And with single shell and 100% infill line, you'll end up with everything will be diagonal across the layers, so you'll get a very smooth layer transition too. So you'll be able to test layer adhesion.
Yeah, I have to find like an optimal way to do this, and.
But I think you're on the right track, and I think since you're doing the same test like 10 times, you'll find with your slicers, as you figure out your pattern, as long as you get the same results multiple times, then you'll know that you've got your slicing configured the way you need to have it configured.
Yeah, that's the reason I printed out like 40 of those now, and I want to get a real batch, not like a one-off, because one thing that will impact this also, because I'm pulling with my hand, and if I pull slowly or fast onto it, and that might make some different results. So I'm trying to do a speak of a sample batch as I can to see how the tolerances.
We got Joe Mike joined in.
Who's that baby face person there?
Don't make fun of my baby face.
What's up, Joe Mike?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just I've been, you know how like when you get into modeling Rich, you probably know all about this, but like you get into modeling and it's like 8 o'clock, and then all of a sudden it's like 10:30. It's like that. And so I was in Mesh Mixer trying
3
to.
a.m. already. Yeah.
Yeah, and totally forgot about that. Hi, it's going well. What are we talking about?
Large prints, multiple part prints,
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
multiple part projects.
Yeah, challenges of having to design for a multi-part project.
Oh, the only one. Well, I've printed 2 so far that were really truly well, several, I guess. I gotta grab them off of the stinking wall here. So, like, I'm a big fan of The Expanse, and I don't know if many of you have seen that, but so this is the Donager from The Expanse.
That is badass.
It's missing 2 of the boosters because these things for some reason will not complete when I try to print it. It's still not complete, but I decided screw it. I want something on there.
Is that show still on, Joe?
It is. They're actually moving to, I think, Amazon.
Yeah, I've got it saved in my favorites.
It really is amazing. But yeah, as far as multi-phase prints, I mean, this was a single piece. The little guns on the side, this piece, this bottom piece, each booster's its separate piece. Kind of the same thing with the Rocinante, which is also from the same show. So I believe it was this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece. And it was just kind of like these little guides that you put in between and then glue them together. But you had to print out all the pieces. This is at 145%. I'll tell you the ones that I've been really liking lately are the snap fit ones. And you've probably seen like the Saturn V snap fit rockets where you print them out and then you use the little snap fit thing that I just broke.
Thank God you have a 3D printer to fix that.
I can fix it with a 3D printer. Actually, I've already broken it several times, but it's okay. So yeah, you just print each of these things and then you snap them together like the old school models. But I found one online that was the Starship Enterprise, and this is the old school one. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pieces that I printed out on the Prusa, and I really like it. So yeah, I mean, I don't do a whole lot in designing multi part prints, but I do print out a lot of multi-part prints. Were you guys talking more about modeling or what?
Both modeling and doing the prints, assembling the prints afterwards, and all the concerns from initial thoughts to final project.
So have you guys talked about like your glue stash yet?
That doesn't work.
Oh,
Yeah,
we have
we-
Chris there, and we have Chris outside with the fire.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, we hear you
If you don't
fine.
mind? Yeah, we're at the we're stuck at the hotel, so we're sitting down by the little fire thing at the pool.
You got a 3D printer up by the fire?
No, I don't have a printer down here. It's upstairs in the hotel going.
The fire is a 3D printer. You just get some PLA, hold it close enough, and then start molding it.
It's just as hypnotic.
Oh, Chris.
Well, along the same lines of multi-part print, here's an interesting one for you. So if you didn't know, the Lulzbot mini printers, they came out with an option to put an LCD screen on the printer itself. And they had all the multi-parts and all that stuff. But the problem is that they wanted everyone to mount it right here on the inside of the printer, which is not ideal because it kind of goes into the build volume a little bit and kind of gets in the way when you're removing parts and stuff. So what I had to do is I printed out all their stuff, and I had to design another part. It's on Thingiverse. but it was designed with the idea that you take their screen off and you encapsulate this, and you can move your screen to the outside of the printer. So it sits over the top. And it's amazing the amount of times I had to kind of remake this box so that it could mount to their original mount points on the back of their screen, deal with all the cabling problems, and then still mount to the printer using the holes that exist on the printer. So, I mean, when it comes to multi-part design, even doing aftermarket multi-part, just tracking the point seems to be an issue for a lot of people. I wanted to bring that up as a concept because, yeah, we talk about the idea of assembling multiple parts together, but the other part of multi-part is, you know, trying to connect two different things that aren't supposed to be connected.
Non-cohesive bonding.
Well, not cohesive bonding, but also the idea that, you know, mechanically some stuff's just not supposed to go there, so we build adapters.
Adapter and overcome.
Exactly.
Yeah. We're going the Apple route, adapt to all the things.
Exactly, except Apple doesn't adapt anymore. They just kind of tell you how they want you to do it, and that's it.
Well, I meant the fact that you have to use a ton of adapters to...
You need a dongle for your dongle.
Yes.
Yeah, a double dongle.
Yeah, it's crazy. I saw a picture of all the different dongles that a normal Mac user with an iPhone uses. It was crazy.
It really is. And if you look at like the new MacBooks, all they have are USB-C ports, so you have to get like this thing that hangs off the side to get your video and Thunderbolt and regular USB ports. It's like,
aren't they down to one USB-C port altogether?
I thought they're down to like 2 USB-C ports because I don't think one USB-C port on its own can handle the throughput.
So I thought one of those C's is for power.
Well, you can run power through either one of the C's.
Right. So if you want to plug your laptop in, you only have one USB-C port left.
Unless you get that like what they're calling it is the side dock. I call it the tumor, but it's just it has a USB-C in it as well for pass-through charging.
Yeah, most of the dongles have USB-C power inputs on them, so that you can get a USB-C out and a USB-C in, for lack of better words.
So, Chris, what's your experience with large multi-part prints?
Not a lot gluing together. Most of the stuff I've done has all been mechanically fastened. Either, you know, like a snap fit with a screw or something to hold it together, or with pockets for nuts so that your bolts can go through.
I wish we were at the 11 o'clock hour because I had a comment for that.
Save that one for later. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. Breaking up the print can be the challenge. If you unless you receive it, of course, broken up. I've been fortunate. I guess my first printer was a G-Max, so I've been fortunate that I've been able to print a lot of large things in one piece without having to break them up. But you know, for smaller stuff or anglers or multi-angles, like right now, I'm trying to. We're out of the house, so I'm trying to come up with practical ideas that will help us get back in. One of the things is I need to come up with a mount for our center channel speaker underneath the TV, rather than just an ugly old shelving bracket.
It's like you have some kind of obsession with functional printing.
You think?
That's crazy.
But so the concept I'm coming up with that to give it a little bit of strength is I'm designing it so that it uses threaded rod through it to hold it together, rather than so it's mechanically fastened rather than chemically or glued together.
Yeah, breaking things up is a pain in the tuchus. That's actually what I was in Mesh Mixer doing before I hopped on the stream. Was I just went through the tutorial that Mosaic had up on how to break a single STL up into 4 STLs for the multicolor. And man, was that like laborious. So right now I'm just printing out the stuff that was already broken out, but I wanted to get in and start learning how to separate a model for multiple color, multi-material printing. And it's not a simple process, at least not yet.
Yeah, I've never gotten into the mesh mixer. We've been revisiting our designs. We put up, just a solid one 3 times a week, different designs, and then we go back. This is one here that we just revisited, Alicord sword. This is in 3 parts. Anybody check out Lumatube? He just casted this, I think, 2 weeks ago. Come out really good.
What was that knife that you were printing?
Recently here I just put on Twitter?
Yeah.
Dagger.
The one that I thought was a Chris knife.
Drax's dagger. Yeah, that you thought was from Dune?
Yeah, I thought it was a Chris knife.
Yeah, no, it was Drax's dagger.
From Guardians.
That, yep. Illumitube's going to be casting that sometime within the next month. So, and then the other one, I was talking about this earlier. This is the R5J2. We've revamped this. Once we're satisfied with it, we'll put the STLs of the revamp up. We've got all the legs plug in now, make it a lot easier. The head screws on. It's a hollow body, so you can play around with it. Use it for whatever you want, change, kids with Legos, or whatever you want to put in there.
If you're in California, Washington, or Colorado, there's other stuff you can use that for.
Yeah, I'm in Florida.
Somewhere
Not
to put your
Florida
cookies.
yet.
States by
Somewhere
the
to
back
put
of
your
your
cookie.
hand.
What?
You know those states by the back of your hand. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. He's probably got that app.
No,
He's got his airplane tickets already.
Just come
Hey.
to Canada.
yeah, shoot.
It's all natural. Good Lord put it here for everyone.
Yeah, I mean we were over in San Diego this past month, and so we went with my parents, and my mom has multiple sclerosis, and so she wanted to try the, not she didn't want to like do any kind of like smoking or anything, but she got
the
some candy,
CBD, THC.
yeah,
vape.
CBD and stuff like that, and
My mom's got MS.
totally helped her. It was crazy just how well that calmed her down.
I was never for it before, but my mom has MS. She just got her card 6 months ago, and the difference is it's made.
Yeah,
Is just crazy.
which is, I'm pushing, not really pushing, but like anytime I see a petition for the legalization of medical, I'm like, go for it. Let's get it through so we can get some relief.
But
to
you guys-
those who use it.
You guys don't even have medical there?
We don't even have medical yet.
Oh dang.
We got medical here.
We're dead center in the middle of the Bible Belt. It's really hard to convince people. I mean, I'm a believer, so I believe that God put certain things on this planet for certain reasons, including that
natural.
particular plant.
Where are you at again, Joe?
Missouri.
Well, there's your problem.
Hey, Kansas doesn't have it legalized either. Missouri loves company.
There's your other problem.
Yeah, it is what it is. Eventually, hopefully, we'll see some movement once the other states. I mean, there's states light years ahead of us as far as all of that.
No, people just need to see the effects. Like I say, I've never been for it before, but actually seeing what it does for my mother, as far as the legalizing medical, I definitely am for that.
Yeah, that's pretty much what flipped me as well, completely, because I was just watching the whole week how, over the last 10 years, I've been watching my mom slowly fade from the disease, and to watch her almost gain 10 years back in a matter of an hour, and then that whole weekend to have like my old mom back, it was just
Smile on her face.
yeah, not trembling
know.
and not worrying about something that she's going to react to, and it just anyways, I'm getting us off topic and I apologize, but
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
Well, we got to figure out some way to work that into large assemblies.
Yeah.
Yep. I got to jump back off, guys. But have a great Friday night. Happy weekend, and we'll see y'all next time.
Well, enjoy
Aloha.
the
Aloha, Chris.
Thanks for popping in.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Aloha.
So we were talking about how we were gluing the prints together. Is that kind of where I walked in?
Well, different ways of putting prints together. That's one of the areas.
Okay.
Some of it's been glued, some of it's fasteners. And we talked about, well, what you just demonstrated there, some additional parts you can put in to snap things together.
Snap fits and guides. Yeah, I've got quite the collection of glue now because certain materials take certain glue. So I mean, I've got my standard super glues. You'll find out very quick that I'm a Loctite junkie.
Yeah,
But-
I love Loctite.
Ultra liquid, which is really thin and good to get into the hard to reach spots, and then I've got gel control, which is really good for like precise applications that you don't want like going everywhere.
I like
I
the
got-
gel control. I use that one here.
Stuff's awesome. Stick and seal, which is actually kind of a I don't know. It's
What is,
more
hold
like,
that up again.
whoa, it's leaking out. That's not going to be good. This stuff right here, stick and seal, and I need to
Okay.
clean it up again.
Gorilla just came out with a new super gel. It's really good too.
Yeah, the only thing about Gorilla glues that I've used in the past, and it's for a couple of different of theirs, is the expansion. I know their main is the worst. So if you get just straight up Gorilla Glue, when the glue expands, I mean that messes up your assembly. But even their super glue for a while there, I don't know if they changed the formula, but it expanded too. This stuff is more like caulk. And then I got Amazing Goop, which is not a Loctite product, but it's goop.
No, I know what that is.
And then this is the one that I use a lot. This is called Go-To Glue, which is a type of super glue, but it's not like super glue. It's kind of a mix between the two I got here. So it's not super runny, not super jelly. It just has a nice consistency and really good for gluing large objects together since you can get a high flow rate out of it. So that's a good one. Other than that, I've also used JB Weld and acetone.
Yeah, when we first started, I was using acetone slush on everything.
Yeah.
I
And
haven't used that in a long time.
I did friction weld two pieces together using a Dremel and a piece of PLA, but I found that the amount of work that it took to do that versus just gluing it wasn't worth it.
One question about the super glue, the CA glue. Are you seeing different results between brands, or is super glue, CA glue basically the same between brands? Depending on thickness, just the
I see
brand.
differences with the materials. So one glue will work differently on a different material. Like the super glues will melt some of the plastics a little more than it'll melt another plastic versus using, so like the plastics that I want to stick without melting, I'll use like either the goop or the adhesive that I've got here. Just because they aren't super glue and they won't melt pieces together, or they won't melt at all. So that for like when I'm doing like some little add-ons and stuff like that, just a little dab of goop, pop it in, let it set, good to go. But on like stuff where it's going to be covered up anyways, like joining the body pieces together on those prints, I use regular super glue, and on PLA it melts it just a little bit, but not enough to like cause any damage. PETG, I tend to go to these guys. ABS, I used acetone mainly to join prints together with ABS. There were some times I did use super glue with ABS. It melted ABS, but it's okay for that one. And JB Weld I actually used for, what was it? Carbon fiber PETG. I used JB Weld because I wanted it to be strong as the carbon fiber, and I wanted it to also be able to get into the cracks because it's porous because it's a little abrasive. So I figured JB Weld would be fine.
Yeah, I was also thinking about different manufacturers of CA glue. So
Oh,
do you have experienced that one manufacturer or one type of super glue is better than another manufacturer of a super glue? Or is super glue basically super glue and don't really care the manufacturer?
Loctite. Loctite's been my favorite. I mean, I've gone through several
Super
different
glue is
brands.
super glue, I think. I think
But
gel and the liquid's a difference, obviously, but
yeah, I mean, they change the viscosity. But like the stuff that I tend to steer away from is like the 4-pack or 5-pack of the really skinny like airplane model glue. That stuff tends to discolor and leave like really weird artifacts if it does happen to leak out. Where I've found that the Loctite stuff, their formula dries clear. So even if a little super glue does get out of the crack, if it dries, it'll dry clear, and then I can just scrape it off with a razor blade. But the other stuff kind of, since it's so thin and it when it dries, it starts turning white if it gets out and like kind of spreads across the part. There's no getting off other than sanding it, which I don't want to do.
yeah, it's definitely whatever your intentions are for it. I mean, we sand everything, so and I usually use super glue and baking soda, so that definitely requires some sanding. But a little bit of paint will take care of anything.
Yeah, and if your end goal is to sand and paint, I mean, it doesn't really matter much if you have spillage or what glue, as long as it's strong at that point.
Yep.
I'm not a big sander or painter of prints, so I don't do a whole lot of that. I've taped prints together.
MacGyver that damn thing, huh?
Kinda. You know, little packing tape and then roll it into the little double-sided ball and put it together. Whenever worked in the time, I had to get two pieces together to figure out alignment of something, and I just used tape for a while, and then I eventually glued it. So
Yeah. Do you think the colorant of the glue turning white is because of contaminant in the glue or manufacturers or
I would just say it's a slightly different formula. Because if you look at super glues, like the ultra liquid on the Loctite versus the gel control, they have different curing times. They both do really, those are delicious, by the way. Cowtails.
I had to buy them all to get the cup for free. $7 worth of cowtails.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, it was for the trip to Earth. It was awesome.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know. It's not on these. It was on the packaging. But like all the different super glues that I have right here, so these three would be considered the super glues. All three have different cure times. So they'll do the initial set in like 30 seconds of pressing, 30 seconds to a minute, I should say. And then after that, it's all different cure times. So they've got slightly different formulas going on here, but you know, I don't know. Like I said, the only ones that I find that really discolor are those really inexpensive ones that are in the little aluminum tubes that you.
Is that the 302 in your right hand?
302. I got go-to.
302. Oh, maybe that's it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah, the go-to is my go-to.
That's Loctite, right?
Yep. Fixed a sandal with it too.
A couple weeks ago. That's really good.
Although I will say, as far as my favorite paste-based goop, amazing goop has really been amazing. Goop.
What we should do right now, we're not shutting down. It's just that we're at the 2-hour mark.
11 o'clock.
So we'll get, we'll go through everybody. Let us know where folks can find you, and then we'll continue on from there. And then, although it's been fairly open after this part, things open up, and sometimes language deteriorates, what have you. Hopefully, any kids watching will be gone by now.
Mine's deteriorating, the rest
you started
follow.
off, so why don't you kick off again here?
Yeah, I'm Marteinn, and I have a channel called 3DP Iceland, and I'm on Twitter as well as 3DP Iceland, and I do all sorts of stuff on my channel, filament tests and projects around my printers. But landscapes are really my thing. I print out very detailed landscapes and then paint them with acrylic paints. So that's maybe the main thing on my channel that I do, that not so many people do. That are those landscapes, but I tend to do all kind of things around my printers. If any maintenance or upgrades or anything I do YouTube videos of that. So that pretty much is what I do. So that's me.
Great. David?
Hey, David Randolph with Printed Solid. You can find me over at printedsolid.com and all those other fun Printed Solid Facebooks and Twitters and Instagram and all that stuff. And always check us out. And always check our Twitters on Mondays, because that's our new product Mondays, where we actually post a new product we're carrying every Monday.
And you guys also have the Maker Box.
Of course. By the way, you missed
got
my
this month.
story from earlier, where I've owned Maker Box, or part of Maker Box, for a little over a year now, and they finally gave me a box to take home. I own the damn company, and I finally got to take a box home. That's all I'm saying. So you got to yell at Matt for me anytime you get a chance.
Well, yell at him for not sending my box early this month.
Okay, who's next? I'm probably going to screw up your name. Shom? Is that how you say your name?
Shom.
Shom.
That was pretty good. Yep,
Okay.
That sounds good. All right, I'm Shom Jarbo with Askewed View 3D, father and son's 3D printing business. We're doing 3 new designs a week for this year. Some really cool stuff like this, the combat axe from Call of Duty, stuff from video games, movies, TV shows, stuff I loved as a kid, stuff my kids loved. We're using YouTube for advertising, and we just thoroughly enjoy this community.
Great. Joe
Cheers.
I'm here. Sorry. I got the Mosaic palette recently, and I just got it to where it's printing correctly, so we'll get into that. Joe Mike Terranella. My channel is Joe Mike Terranella, JMT. I'm on Twitter at Mojike, on Instagram at jterranella. At one point, I was doing a lot of stuff with 3DKC with the Raspberry Pi stuff, but I'm giving that a break until my child, who will be born in the next week or so, turns 2. So we'll get there. My channel is also the official MakerBox monthly channel, which is why I need my box early, Dave.
Sounds
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Other than that, just playing around with multicolored printing, which is kind of fun, talking about the multi-part prints and how we put them together. And I'm starting to get into the multi-material, multicolor stuff, and it's doing it for me, which is nice. So that obviously on a small scale, but it's also very wasteful in the plastic.
Right. And I'm Richard Murray. The channel is the Zdim channel. You're watching it. To find out everything I'm up to, take a look at zdim.com, my website. And the main area you find me on Facebook is actually 3D printing for model trains. That's my focus. And although I haven't been doing much lately, I've been on the road and dealing with health issues. But back at it, I have several containers of resins here to try out. Gotten into SLA printing. So yeah, check out 3D printing for model trains or head over to vidme.com and to see the works. And as I mentioned, we are continuing on here. It's just traditional at the 2-hour mark. We get everybody's information out there. And I'll mention again that, yes, since I haven't done this for many months, I have to get back in here and get into the description and get everybody's contact info updated on there. We'll get there. So where were we before we got into that? We were talking about blues again.
I gotta say how good you look, though. How healthy you look. I mean, I didn't even recognize you this evening. I think that's just wonderful. I just had to interject that.
Oh, thank you. Big part is I went and got a haircut. And the hat's not here right now. The reason the hat's not here is I have it packed. My mom never understood about my top hat. So for her 92nd birthday, she was in the hospital. So I wore it into the hospital and gave her a good laugh. I had a lot of people staring at me too, but she enjoyed it.
Yeah, you definitely have more energy in you now than I've seen of you this year. Yeah,
well, it's been a long haul. Back in December, I got ill. And I'm just starting to do things again. But thank you all for that. Oh, by the way, yeah, we don't have a topic yet, but the next stream, August 11th. And I know I won't be around for that one.
Neither will I. I'll be a new father at that point.
Yeah.
Unless I can bring baby on the stream. Well, right now we're slated for inducing on the 6th, but her OB is not even sure she'll make it to that. So we'll see.
That's awesome, my friend.
Yeah,
babies will make up their own minds on this.
That's very true. That's very, very true. But it'll be no later than the 6th or 7th, depending on, when the baby actually decides to come. But they're inducing on the 6th. So, yeah, I bet on the 11th I'll probably be awake. So if you don't mind a screaming baby on the stream, I can hop on. Better she gets a early introduction to the community.
Just bring the baby monitor. That'll be fine.
Okay, so the sad part is the baby monitor that we have. It's awesome. Highest rated one that I could find. It works great. Color, the night vision, pan and tilt and zoom. It gets zero reception down here in the basement. You take it up 4 steps and it's full reception. Go down 4 steps into my domain and nothing. So I'm guessing it's just, God's way of telling me this is, baby free domain down here.
It means you're not going to be spending as much time there as you thought.
Well, I'm thinking I'll get one of those little mama strapadoos on that, you kind of tie and wrap and bundle them up, swaddle them, and just kind of swaddle it onto my chest while I'm doing things, except soldering. I don't want to solder around the baby, even though my grandpa soldered around me. I turned out just fine. Potato!
Turned out fine. We don't
the story and he's sticking with it.
Yeah, if we don't see a 3D printed mount for that baby monitor, we're going to be very disappointed in you.
What a mount for what? The actual monitor itself or the screen? The camera or the screen?
The camera.
The camera's mounted on the wall. It came straight with a mounting solution already, so.
And you can't improve it, huh? That's just disappointing.
Oh, I can always change it. I don't know if it'll be an improvement. Progress for the sake of progress, Dave. I guess one thing that would be kind of cool though would be to 3D print maybe a collar for it that had some intricate design, so it didn't look as Uncle Sam, Big Brother's watching you kind of camera up in the corner. More of a festive oh, hi, the NSA's watching me, but with Flair in the corner.
Or you'd say that now, but 4 years from now, you're going to want the collar for the baby.
Yeah. I can 3D print that too.
3D print a Maker Box mobile for over the crib.
A Maker Box mobile?
Do you know if it's a boy or girl, Joe?
It's a girl.
Oh, that's cool. You better get an arsenal by the time she's 6.
Well, I have a slight arsenal, but I think I talked about this on the last stream where either this last stream or my last stream that I did, but I'm going to win over her potential boyfriends. I'm actually going to make them to where they want to hang out with me more than her. So then when they think about doing something to my little girl, they're going to be like thinking, oh man, this is going to mess up my friendship with her dad, and I love his workshop.
That's the wrong approach. I have a little sister who's 20 years younger than me. My dad was like, what? It still works? About 4 months ago, I walked out, and I caught him. Actually, it was with my other sister's, his granddaughter's boyfriend, and he was giving a speech, and he had his hand on the kid's shoulder, and he said, look, just know this. Whatever you do to my granddaughter, I will do to you. And the look on that kid's face, that was definitely the way to go.
Yeah, but in the end, it's psychologically proven that trust and positive reinforcement is more effective than a threat or negative reaction. So basically, the theory is if you can win over the trust, then it's more powerful for possible deterrent than just sitting there and cleaning your gun while the kid comes over, which I might do a couple times.
Well, I didn't say nothing about a gun. It's just a nice little calming massage on the shoulder as you let them know what's going to happen.
Well, all I can really do is say, okay, listen close. Her last name is Terranella. My last name is Terranella. There's a whole bunch of Terranellas in the city. You know why? Because we're Italian. You know what Italians are known for? I was just going to leave it at that. You have a lovely evening with my daughter. Have her back by 10, or we will find you.
You made the speech already.
I own this city, boy.
I don't think I had any speeches written before Brenda was there.
All 600 people know me.
Man, yeah, I'm scared a little bit of that in the future, but I'm hoping that I can raise a girl who is smart and witty and quick on her feet and knows how to be her, knows who she is, and doesn't, rely on the accolades or, someone who's independent. Yeah,
I feel you. You're going to do just fine, buddy. Don't sweat it, and don't be all stressed out about this and that. Don't sweat the small things. Trust me. I raised 2 kids myself for 16 years. You're going to do wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
Real quick.
So far my plan has been just make her a nerd, and it should fix itself. It should be fine.
I don't know. There's a lot of hot nerds anymore.
Well, she'll bring home other nerdy guys, and they'll be like, you ain't doing anything.
I don't know. Nerd is such a wide description anymore, my friend.
That's true.
Yeah.
I hope to raise a little maker, though. I hope she takes after her daddy as far as her desire to make. I don't care if it's 3D printing, woodworking, or sculpting or painting. I just hope she has a passion for it. We'll see. Kids do their thing.
The way the technology is going, when she's 4 years old, she's going to be showing you stuff on the printer.
Oh, she'll probably be modeling in virtual space and then just swiping it over to a printer, which just prints it. I can't begin to. I'm 35, almost 35, and the exponential leap in technology from when I was 5 playing with 286 and 386 or Commodore PETs to now where I can take all the machines from that I owned in the 90s, add them together as far as power, and it's still not as powerful as what I've got in my pocket. So who knows where we're going 30 years from now.
Oh, definitely.
It's
But just
depressing when you go to your kid and go,
all the movement
look,
pad,
this-
everything's wiping it.
Yeah.
Sorry about
I mean,
that, Richard.
It's like when my grandpa told me I'd never fill up my 20 gig hard drive, you know, back in 19 something, and the MP3 came out and that killed that. But now I'm sitting next to a machine that has, you know, 6 terabytes worth of storage and 64 gigs of RAM. When my grandpa bought our first flash drive, it was 128 megabytes, and he was like, "This thing is huge."
I still have my first computer. It's, 15 years old. That's it. I was a block jock and grew up on a construction site. It was only because of several surgeries and being retrained that I had to go behind the scenes, and now an architectural drafter and designer. It's the only reason I even got a PC to begin with. Go figure. Look at us now.
Man, I still have my
first
Commodore
crash
PET.
had 4K of RAM, and I upped it to 16K of RAM, and the sales guy thought I was a nutcase.
Well, shoot, my Commodore PET was a new session every time that you started it. If you wanted to use it, you had to program it or use a cassette, like an actual tape, to load a program. And anything that you programmed on it, if you didn't want to lose it, you had to save it to cassette tape. And so I just had this big old thing of cassette tapes that had all the little programs that my grandfather programmed and the little ones that I programmed, just basic, on these tapes. And that was how the Commodore PET worked. That was before the 64, the Commodore 64.
It was like a Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah, it was like
Crash 80 was the same thing with cassettes. When you bought a program, what you got was a few sheets of printed code with comments about how you'd alter it for whatever flavor of DOS you were running.
Yeah. See, this didn't even run DOS. That's I remember running DOS though, and my grandfather was a little ahead of
I
the
don't even
time.
know what DOS is. I got raced like a piss horse. I'll be right back.
Okay. I just
tell you
see
a fun
I
story
saw what
about-
he did there.
Yeah, I was going to tell you about the fun story about the cassettes. In Louisville, Kentucky, there was a pirate radio station that every Friday night would come up, and they would play out games and programs that you would record over the radio to cassette and then play back on your VIC-20. And that's how you would get your programs. It was kind of cool.
Mm. That is cool.
Yeah.
I remember my grandfather was telling me stories about the computers that he had when he was working at Bendix, and there were those, cliche stories, the room full of computer, and they were using punch cards, and it was the punch cards that saved all the programs. So one program could be this whole box full of punch cards, and you just inserted it, then take it out, then insert the next one, take it out. And then he talked about when they finally went to hard disk, and the size of the hard disks were actually enough to like take up these huge things. They were like cylinders, and they would make tables out of them and sit and put terminals around it in a circle, and then all the hard disks were underneath the terminals, and it all went back to the master computer, which was across along the wall. And he was just telling me about how it was slowly evolving there at Bendix, and they were on the cutting edge of technology. So this was before I was even born.
Well, I worked with Stanley Engineering, and one of my jobs, I had to go find a punch card reader that was operational so they could take one of the programs and actually archive it to a hard drive. And it took me a long search to find a working punch card reader. That was 1980.
So last week I had to go track down a zip disk reader.
Oh, God.
Because someone had actually saved their files to zip disk as a backup, and then their computer crashed, and we got their new computer in our office, and they sent us the zip disk. I got it, and I was like, "You have got to be kidding me! This is like sending an 8-track." But yeah, so we had to track down a zip disk drive. That was horrible, and it wasn't even USB.
Yeah. Did the data work? Was it all right on the disk?
Yeah, the data was preserved on the disk just fine. But it ran off serial, so I had to use a USB to serial converter. So I'm not sure what kind of speed, throughput I was getting with using a converter with a zip disk. But yeah, I was able to pull all the data off of the zip disk and put it on to this new machine. And then I told him to go buy an external hard drive.
Well, there's speculation that, far in the future, they'll call this the Dark Ages because they won't be able to find any of our information. We have so much data on there. It's not like they can go and find, stone tablets or something like that. It'll just be lost electronic signals that won't be recorded anywhere.
Google will keep our archived everything and bring us into the future. So as long as Google has some kind of place where they can store all the information, and then it's like, buried 10,000 years in the future, they find the Google data center and they figure out a way to, adapt it to whatever technology they're using. They'll find out all about the stupid crap that we're into.
Either that, or we have to, in order to save civilization, keep Google going.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about data retention. I'll tell you a horrible problem I had. I worked for a company, I can't say their name, but they've been a television network for over 25 years. And they stored all of their tapes and all of their original source media on tape in a warehouse. And a forklift driver accidentally backed up into the sprinkler system, the fire system, and the entire warehouse flooded. And that was their only backup for those original tapes. So they lost 25 years of that network's media and source material.
I pulled videotape out 1-inch reels and have this white powder come off.
Yep.
And what it turned out is the adhesive to keep the particles to the plastic of the videotape was a great food for mold.
Yep.
So the bacteria came, ate it, grew mold, and all your data fell off.
And that problem was consistent all the way up until DVC Pro as a format.
Yes. So.
Nerds.
Yeah, one story. I was at some storage meetup, and there was a company that had a lot of data and terabytes and whatnot of some very old data. And after searching out the data types and the media formats of the data, they found out that they had no software to read out the data files. So, and they measured out that 80% of the storage usage they were having was data that no program was able to read. And they were still storing it on their primary storage in their network. So, so it's one thing to have the physical media to able to read the data, but you also have to have the programs to read the data.
The data. Well, that sort of brings to mind one thing. We're fairly new with 3D printing, but for those of you who've been in it for a while, how have your prints aged?
Fine.
If you got
my finished prints aged very well.
What's a while? I mean, we gotta kind of define that scope, because
how far back can we go?
We go back to the 80s when it was, rolling on the huge machines. Or we.
Yeah, I've only been doing this a year and a half, so I can't go back that far. I'm not a big nerd like you guys. I actually like women.
I mean, I've been doing it for about 2.5, 3/4 of a year, something like that. Almost 3 years now. And the things that I printed when I first started have aged fine. I don't really know how they'll look
Go
in 10
back,
years.
I have prints from 2008 that are perfectly fine still.
Okay.
Now
But
those are
PLA is a little more fragile. ABS is kind of last forever.
Well, a year and a half ago when we started, I've got some that actually didn't make it so well, but I learned a lot, and all the ones this year since we started designing to a weave, they're all holding up pretty well.
Yeah, like with old PLA, will it go brittle or what happens to it? If you have old PLA parts?
I'm in Florida, and all my stuff I do on the back porch, and I actually kept all our original ones, the original gold ones I paint, were on the back porch for like 8 months before I just brought them in here. They were fine. Nothing happened. It's an enclosed porch, but it's still, I don't know. Now I wouldn't leave it inside a car, an enclosed car, because I did that before, and I've had business cards just curl.
I had PLA fidget spinners that I left in my car, and the bearings just plopped right out. Never fit again.
Yeah, it's an OCD nightmare.
That's when super glue came into the equation to put the bearings back in.
I've seen, I think about a year ago, Angus did a number of tests putting different materials in on his dash of his car.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Glenn put frogs all over his property. They're still out there, I'm sure. From Funky 3D?
Yeah, Glenn did. He put it up in different directions, so some would be in the sun and someone in the shade. And
he's still got frogs out there.
So this is what I'm currently printing with the palette. I don't know if you can see that.
Vendor.
Yeah. Look at that block next to it. The purge block.
That is crazy. See, that's why I'm never, well, at least not right now, ever going to get into it. If there's some way they can make that purge block part of the infill, I'm down for that.
Yeah, well, that's what Prusha's been working on, is the transition in infill. The problem is like the size of the print and the placement of the different colors. The purge block, I think we could probably get away with doing like a lattice versus like solid layers. It just really depends on how quickly the filament can change colors.
Yeah, I saw the update.
All our stuff. I never worry about it. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I saw the update from Prusa, and they still have a purge block, but they could reduce the size of the purge block by using infill as a part of the process.
Oh, so just use a smaller purge block, but use the infill as kind of like a start or head start on the purge block, so it can be smaller.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Okay.
The reason why you don't want to use you don't want to purge entirely for your infill, because you're never quite sure when you're going to get that back pressure in the nozzle. So what they can do is they can kind of predict and do a decent amount of purge, get through the color change, and then use a purge tower to get that back pressure and get all the air out of it.
Yeah, and they were also having an option to print a secondary part that would have the transactions in. So you could, if you're just doing a functional part, you don't mind the colors in the other part. So you'd have a production part, so to speak, and then just a parts part.
Excuse me. Uh-oh, I'm yawning.
It makes sense, because as you say, those purge blocks can get huge. So, you know, it's been a drawback with mine. We have these concerns about plastics in the environment, and here we are making large amounts and wanting to find ways to make use of it.
Yeah, I wish that there was some way to recycle that, but not really any way efficient way yet.
Mine works in a big black plastic bag, but
To do what now?
nothing.
Yeah, I have a large container of plastic that's looking for a new use. So
I've actually got a big bunch of old maker coins and other parts that were failed. I've got them in a bucket, and I'm thinking about for Halloween setting up one of my tables as a big maker coin cemetery and displaying it out in the front porch. Put a bucket of candy in the middle of it.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
In answer to your question, no, I haven't had a chance yet. Soon.
What was the question?
It's between me and Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you on your knees at the moment. I missed that.
Inside printed solid stuff. You know, the.
Oh, that Dave. I'm sorry. I was thinking the other one you beg every day.
Oh, Dave Gaylord.
That's why I was saying I didn't see you on your knees.
No.
He's got two Daves he does that to now, so.
Oh my goodness.
I got my East
These
Coast and
things
my
in
West
stock
Coast
and chopstick.
Daves. I just need to get me a Central Dave and I'm set.
No, you're the guy in the middle.
That is so wrong on so many levels.
yeah, definitely after 11.
Oh yeah, no, the kids are gone. It's rum time. We're all having a good time.
We're all watching our printers to see how our prints are going.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me. I had changed filament earlier, and I think Dave was talking about with the energy recovery or the power recovery. A lot of the prints fail. You know, if you're there when it happens, though, and even when I change filament, I just throw a little glue stick on top of the print, make sure it catches there.
And that's okay. I mean, it's just a matter of very structural parts. I find that if your printer goes down for like a day or, you know, or like enough time for everything to cool all the way down.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
If you're not around, I mean, but if you're around, definitely do something.
Yeah, if you can catch it real quick, it's a good recovery and it's fine. That's what I tell most people.
I'm sure I'm not the only one that's throwing some duct tape on a print when support kind of went this way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did that the other day with blue painter's tape. Support just came off the bed, and I was like, no, you shall not fail. It was a huge print, like not huge in the scale of the single part, but there was a lot of parts on the bed, and I was like, I'm not going to let one part screw up the rest of these parts. If I have to reprint you, that's fine, but I'm not going to have like you stringing all over the place and messing up the rest of them. It's actually the red parts for the what I call CHEP, which is my red Mark IIS, the one that I brought back from the dead.
Return of the Living Dead, classic.
I prefer Army of Darkness.
Oh, I love Sam Raimi. I love Bruce Campbell.
I love Bruce Campbell too. Yep. This is my boomstick.
Briscoe County Jr. is one of my favorite TV shows. It's just a classic. Bruce Campbell.
It didn't have a long enough life.
Nope. But Bruce is just awesome. What was the mummy one? Oh, Bubba Hotep.
He wasn't. I think he should have been the Old Spice guy longer. He's perfect as the Old Spice guy. Yeah. I understand why they changed it to go to the new format, which is cool to see how they shot those continuous commercials of the "now I'm on a horse" and these, you know, the weird ones that just kept going and going and going, and like he changed scenes and stuff. And then the ones with Terry Crews were fun, where he was hooked up, like all of his
Yeah, I
muscles
love
were hooked
Terry
up to the
Crews.
different instruments.
It's so funny.
Yeah, wasn't that Old Spice?
Yeah. But for a
Yeah.
while there, Bruce Campbell was the Old Spice guy. He was like their spokesman, and I was like, that's just like freaking perfect.
Yeah, I remember those. And now I'm on a horse.
Yeah. So
In a small area with, since I don't watch TV, I'm missing a lot.
oh, this is
Yeah,
stuff
but
that
Old
will
Spice does not smell good.
What's the cancel object for Octoprint? What is this? Are you talking about, Matthew?
Oh,
What?
yeah, the cancel object for Octoprint. Oh my God, I really want to see that come to be more stabilized. But the idea is that if you print a plate with like 20 objects on it with using Octoprint, they have a plugin so that you can literally say, "Oh, that part's not printing any good now. It fell off the plate." You can cancel one object, and it just stops printing that one.
How the crap? I guess it would look at the coordinates for that object and any commands between that coordinate and the last coordinate for that object. It would just
Any
truncate?
non-connecting surfaces.
Actually, it's based on, you have to use Simplified 3D, and you have to have each part in a separate process.
Yep.
So it will know the process names, so you will get a list of the
Oh.
processes. Then you can
So-
cancel that process.
Okay.
But then I saw another plugin that is like a canceller area, where you could draw out where on the bed your loose part was, or broken part. Then you could
Basically-
It's
cancel out.
like a what area?
Then you can select an area on the bed and cancel that area.
So that
Okay.
it basically is like a black zone for any G code that happens to want to go in that area. It's like, oh, nope, all this G code's in the black zone, so we're moving outside of it now.
Yeah, so those are the two plugins that are recent, and I installed them, but I haven't had to use them.
Interesting.
Marteinn, what is your shirt? Is that
Uh,
is that something over in Iceland? Is that a character? What is that?
Captain Visan. Actually, this is a character in relation to my work, and it's a Visan is a storage appliance using VMware technology, and I work with VMware in my IT job. And Captain Visan is like a mascot of that company. So it's
Okay, so it's nothing I missed on YouTube. I usually watch, I thought, all your videos. I just never seen that before.
no, it's just
IT nerdism.
yeah, IT nerd.
Then again, I like girls. I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, it's no problem. Yeah, I got T-shirts that I was setting up a Merc store with Spreadshirt, and I got a T-shirt. And the design here is I'm here just for the cat.
Nice.
I sometimes get
You can take that in many ways. I hope your wife doesn't take it in the wrong way.
no.
Because Cat was at Earth.
This is actually a comment I got on one of my videos, and because very often my cats jump on the table and I never edit them out. I leave them in the videos. So,
No, I know what it was for. Your
Yeah,
cats are on. I'm just a smart ass.
yeah, and I even got comments on a video where there was no cat appearance. So I got, "Where's the cat? Is the cat okay?" So they're part of the show.
Yeah, Gus isn't camera shy, but the new one, Sweetie, she doesn't come near a camera.
Yeah, you have two now.
Yeah, well, I adopted one this spring, so she's starting to move around more and get onto things. But no, Gus has learned, though, he does not approach either of the printers.
Yeah, I have three cats, and one lady cat and two females, and the female cat is so stressed out. I don't know what's up with her.
Yeah, we got one, Kahlua. You're only going to see her if she wants food. Thinks I have something for her. Other than that, she's cool.
Cool. Well, guys, I am going to check out of here.
Yeah, I was about to head out too. I'm getting sleepy.
Get another point.
Yeah, we're almost at 3 hours.
I know we can't talk while Marteinn's on the stream. Yada yada. 3 o'clock. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, it's almost 5 o'clock in the morning. So.
We need
You're
to
all ready
start
for-
the day.
It's a new day. Sun is almost up.
Yeah. Right now we're talking to Marteinn in the future. That's
Well,
that's
thank you
actually
all for being on tonight. It was a good one. As I say, I don't know what the topic's going to be for the next one. I know I won't be around, but make sure you tune in to the F3DPCH Facebook page, and Matt will have posted what channel to keep an eye on and what the topic will be.
Yeah. I think
That
it's been
sounds
We've been
good.
talking about cats, so the dog had to come on.
My doggy's asleep right now.
Great
Yeah.
stuff. Well, once again, thanks all. And I'll kill it here. I remember how we do that. And we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.